Hey, welcome back. This is Seth from the Otis Photography Lab. I have a few more tips on Adobe InDesign for you today. As you can see here, I have one issue. I've tried to open my book file, and it's giving me this error message that says some of my links are missing. This is going to be a common problem unless you always have your source files plugged into your computer locally, um, or if you don't, or if you happen to move some files around or rename them, this will often happen. So I'll walk through what you might do if you see that. You can go to the window drop-down menu and choose the links panel. As you can see here, I've got some alerts in this panel as well. These question marks indicate that the links are missing. And so I'll just double click on one of these and I'll have to relink that. So now I'm just going to search for the file name it's telling me up here at the top. That is the name of the missing file on which I clicked. And that file name is db-096 underscore. Okay, and it's popping up here. So I'm just going to select that one and click open. Now, if you have these files scattered around in different places, or if they were renamed, they might be harder to track down. In this case, it did manage to find one other file automatically. If they're all in the same folder, this can be a pretty quick process, and it can go through and find everything else. In my case, it looks like what I've done is I've moved some of these files off of my desktop into a folder, and so now I'm going to have to kind of hunt around and try to find where the other ones went. Okay, now it looks like that has found all of my missing files. This is something that you want to double check before you go to export your final PDF. If you do try to export it and you have missing files, it will give you a warning, just a heads up. So now we're in good shape with that. I wanted to first of all talk a little about these two little pages up here that you see at the top. It says A Master. So these are the master pages. This can be used to add a design or some sort of object to every page. Anything I add to these pages will then be applied to the left and right page of every spread throughout. You can make exceptions and say you don't want it to apply to certain ones. One really handy thing here is to add page numbers. So I'm going to take my type tool and I'm just going to draw out a text box down here. So I've got a blinking cursor. You go up to type and then down to insert special character and markers, current page number. So you can see that's given me a little A there. Just gonna this is another handy tip. If you're in a text box with the flashing cursor, sometimes it can be hard to get out of it. If you push escape, that's a shortcut. It'll just select the box for you, and then it automatically gives you your selection tool. I'm also going to hit the W key so I can see my guides, and I'm going to shrink the size of this down. Yeah, I'll zoom in a little bit. I just want to place this page number. I could place it in the corner. I could place it in the middle. I think I'll do the middle. And just for Just to make this a little easier, I'm going to just align the bottom of that text box with my guide on the bottom. So I'll copy that A and then I'll come over here. I could do the same process, but you can also just copy paste over here. So I'll paste my right side page number in, place it there. And you could also go back and grab my type tool. You could select that if you wanted to go in and change your type size, your font, make it bold, any other qualities. And there is, just so you know, come down here to types and tables, there's also character, paragraph, some other very helpful panels for working with text. I'm just going to leave that as it is, and I'll go back and double click on one of my pages, and you can see that's automatically given me page 3. You can't see it because of my green rectangle here, but that's page 2, and then page 1 is going to be my cover. And now as it turns out, I actually don't want pages 1 and 2 to be numbered. I want the numbering to start on this first page with a photo. So a couple things I'm going to do. Up here above the master pages, there is another little thumbnail page that says none. I'm going to drag that and drop it on any page that I don't want to have that master rule applied to. Okay, so now that no longer applies to the cover and the first page. I'm going to go here and select what's currently the third page, come up here to these little horizontal lines, hamburger menu it's called, and I'll deselect these two options here, allow document pages to shuffle and allow selected spread to shuffle. So I'll deselect those, and then I'll come in here to numbering and section options. And I want to choose this option here, start page numbering at, and make sure that's on 1. And OK. It's going to give me a warning. And then it does renumber that to number 1. And let's just see how the rest of this is looking. Okay, that all seems fine. Now I might, if I didn't have an opaque color covering these pages, I would see that I might have to get rid of those numbers as well. In this case, since it is being covered, I'm not going to worry about it. A couple of other things. Let me save that real quick. If you are in a shared workspace environment and you're moving around different computers, different situations, you might have slightly different versions of InDesign. You can see I'm still trapped in the 2018 version here. So if I go into the lab and I work on something in 2019, it then will not let me open that in my outdated version of InDesign, which can be frustrating. So what you can do when you're in the most recent version, if you save your project as IDML, and that is going to save it as a version that can be opened in older versions of InDesign as well. And then when you're in that workspace, you can go ahead and then just save it as you would a normal INDD or document file. So now let's say we're happy with this project and we want to go ahead and print it. The next step is, once you've confirmed that all of your links are found, you don't have any issues with font missing or any other warnings popping up, You'll then go to File and Export. So remember that in order to print this, so when we print for you in the lab, we'll need a PDF file. We are not going to be able to print from your InDesign file. If you are printing on our Sharp printer, that only likes PDFs. It doesn't want Photoshop or a TIFF or a JPEG file. So you're going to need to go through this process. And so figure out what to call it. Generally, it's helpful for us if you can put your name in there. And then Adobe PDF print is the proper format. I'll go to save, and it's going to bring up some PDF setting options here. Now, if I were going to email this to a friend for feedback, I might choose smallest file size. You have various other quality options here if you're going to do a print-on-demand book. For example, you've got Lulu and MagCloud presets available. I would suggest just going with high quality print for our purposes, and in most cases that's going to be fine. I would just go through and double check that everything is okay here. You want it to be on pages and not spreads. In 99% of cases that's true. So if we need to fold or staple, having it in pages format is going to allow us to have the machine shuffle those pages around in order to fold them in the proper order. Just go down here. We don't really typically need to worry about this since in most cases our images are going to be not above 300 pixels per inch. You can see the default here. It's only going to scale those down, down-res those a little if they're above that. Typically people are trying to print at 300, maybe your images are at 72. In either case it should leave them alone. You can also take a look at your color conversion. You can do no color conversion. If you feel good about your original file there, you know, it is always a bit of an issue trying to work around color changes that might come up in the process, but that's why it's good to do a test print. And then we have a little bit of wiggle room on the printing software end of things, but maybe you do one small test first, say okay it's looking too magenta or something, then you can come back and think about shifting your project in a different direction. But for now I'm just going to say export, and depending on how large your files are and how many of them you have, that's going to take just a minute. You can see the progress bar up here is working. And so once that exports out, you want to make sure it's really finished, because if you give us a copy of that PDF before it's fully saved, then it'll just be a broken file. We won't be able to do anything with it. Make sure that's fully saved out. In my case, it's going to automatically open in preview because I have it set up to do that. And I would typically view this. I'll go view 2 pages, so that's going to give me a sense of what it would look like if it were folded, where the page break is. Okay, and then if you're sure that's the right page count, remember, you know, if you're stapling, you have to think about it being in multiples of 4. Same thing is true of folding and not stapling. If it's a saddle stitch booklet, needs to be, you know, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and so on. If you're not folding or stapling, then it just has to be an even number. And as long as your size is where you need it to be, remember you want to double check that as well in your document setup. Letter half, then we are in good shape. You can just go ahead and give us the file. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks.